We're gonna put you with a foster mum called Laura. You're gonna love her.
Oh, welcome to your new home.
All right, Bring Her Back. New supernatural psychological horror film from the land down under, directed by the dynamic duo Danny and Michael Philippou. Me and Tyler watched it over the weekend, and we have some thoughts, don't we, Tyler?
Yeah, loved this film. I don't know whether you watched Talk to Me. It was their debut film.
Yeah, I did watch and loved Talk to Me too. Very different film, and we'll get into that. This one is a step up in every way, I think.
Yeah, this one felt a bit special.
It was, but before we get into it, I should say that the movie starts with what I guess was a vanity card. It was like this creepy footage of like this fetus, like VCR footage, and with a card saying, "This is not a cult." And can I just say that I agree with this statement here. And this channel, also not a cult. I know it says cult in the name, but don't worry about it. You can come in, you can subscribe, like, share, and spread the good word, and you will be rewarded. Bring Her Back, new movie. Very good movie. Let's get into it. As Tyler mentioned, from the creators of Talk to Me, Danny and Michael Philippou. I hope I am pronouncing that name correctly. And yeah, so I really loved Talk to Me. It was a fun cinema experience. It was a great, simple story. Really liked the main performance. I forget the name of the actress, but I thought she felt very real in the movie. The best part of Talk to Me is definitely the gore and the kind of like the effects and like the technical aspects, the cinematography. You know, it was a very polished movie. The story was fairly simple, but it didn't need to be complicated. It was very effective.
Obviously, it was a very clear metaphor, and I thought that was it. It was something that would have maybe worked better in a short film, and got a bit repetitive in the feature film premise. But there was a few really shocking moments in it, and like really memorable scenes.
No spoilers, but the bit with the little brother.
Yes.
That was
really good. That's literally what I was about to mention. And then there's like a bit of like almost like a Society, if you've ever seen that film, like reference like later on in some
I don't think so.
Some really weird capacity that was quite good.
All right, interesting. And I also loved the ending of the movie too. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Talk to Me was, a fun cinematic experience. It was a fun little horror movie. But yeah, compared to this, I mean, this was a fantastic film. And before I get into my thoughts, because I have many, what are yours? Like, did you love this? Did you love this as much as I did?
Yeah, I thought this was great. It could potentially be at the moment, it's my favorite film of the year.
Yeah, might be for me too. I mean, this one and Sinners are probably the best time I had watching a movie so far in 2025.
Yeah.
So
I think you mentioned in Talk to Me, there's some good performances. The performances here are amazing, I think, from pretty much everybody. And there's, only for myself anyway, there was only one recognizable actor in Sally Hawkins, and she was amazing in this. And then
oh my god,
all the kids felt so realistic, especially when you haven't seen them in something before. They're just that person to you, that character that they're playing, and they all gave some of the best child performances I've seen in a while.
So many amazing performances that will be completely ignored at the Oscars and any other big awards ceremony because it's a horror, and these kind of awards do not care about horror for some fucking reason, even though it was an amazing movie from a performance standpoint and like other elements that we'll discuss for sure. Before getting into it, like, I should probably blurt out a little bit of the story so that people who have not seen the film can figure out if this can interest them. We should warn anyone who hasn't seen this film, who hasn't heard about this film, that this is not like your typical kind of like horror movie experience, a couple of jump scares and then you come out of the cinema, laughing with your friends and about what you just witnessed. No, you're gonna come out of this crushed and depressed and dead inside for a few hours.
It's an A24 film, so it's it's a bit more on the art housey side of horror, and that slower pacing can put off some people as well who want to see a different kind of horror experience. But I think in the same way that Hereditary was a more art house and slower paced horror
Yeah.
movie, it cut through because of its quality to the mainstream. Whereas, I don't know whether this has done incredibly well at the box office, but I think this is kind of done a similar thing. It's art house, but I think mainstream audiences are enjoying it too because it is just really good.
There were a lot of Hereditary-like vibes in this,
Yeah.
for sure.
It felt like a more grounded Hereditary because
Yeah.
Hereditary gets real crazy at the end. Whereas this
Even too crazy.
Yeah. Whereas this, you only ever get glimpses of the supernatural, which I really liked, and the trailer sells you on a more supernatural, maybe kind of horror film, and I thought it was going to be a bit more paranormal and stuff, and demonic and culty, and that stuff's all in it, but it's really a psychological thriller and a character drama between the characters, and that was the strongest stuff anyway. So
Agreed. So the plot, very quickly, we have two step-brothers, Piper and Andy. Piper is the younger, and she has some form of visual impairment. She can't. She only can see like lights and shades. She doesn't really make up
I think the actress Sora Wong is partially blind in real life. I believe.
She has one eye working, I think, but in the movie she's completely blind. And her brother Andy, like older stepbrother Andy, he takes care of her. They have a very sweet relationship that I bought into right away. And the movie opens with a bang because like 2 minutes in, we have basically our inciting incident, which is their father dies in the shower.
Yeah.
And this leads Andy and Piper to be sent by social workers to live with this woman, Laura, who's like an eccentric former counselor, played by the great Sally Hawkins, who also fosters another boy who's a mute boy named Oliver. Very weird, creepy. He's in all the posters. He's like the face of the movie for a reason.
Yeah, so important to note that Andy is on the cusp of being 18 and being able to be independent, and he can move into his own place and be his own guardian, and at that point he would be able to also take Piper under his guardianship too. And that Sally Hawkins' character doesn't want Andy initially. She just wants Piper to and there's a bit of a struggle to get him, the social worker has to do a bit of negotiating to get them both there.
Yeah, exactly. And so the plan is to stay with this woman for 3 months up until the time where Andy officially becomes an adult, and then he will be able to claim guardianship over Piper, and they will be able to go live together alone. But for now, they need this guardian, and the guardian is unfortunately a crazy lady whose daughter, Kathy, who was also blind, died in an accident, drowning in their pool a few years back. And Laura has obviously not been the same since. This is kind of like the premise of the movie. We have these two brothers trying to settle into this new home and dealing with Oliver's weirdness and with Laura's eccentricity, and slowly but surely their relationship is tested by Laura, by Oliver, and by this weird situation they find themselves in. And we have one of the most gripping horror movies I've seen in a while.
It's very clear we'd both recommend this film. If you haven't seen it yet, I think it's probably still around at the cinemas. Go definitely check it out. It's
do it.
Yeah, as I said right off the bat, it was one of my favorite films of the year, and I think it probably will remain so by the end of the year. We shall see.
I don't know what's up with Australians, man, but I think they make great horror movies. I think the Babadook was also Australian, wasn't it?
I was
That
gonna
was
mention
another.
that as well, because this is another Hereditary and the Babadook. It was probably what this film reminded me of the most, because we're
Yeah,
the Babadook had an amazing performance between a mother and their son,
and
and
a
the
child.
boy
Yeah,
was, I think, autistic, so he was a bit difficult for her to deal with, and she ends up sort of snapping at him, and then yeah, it was a very complex relationship they had, and yeah, both like powerhouse performances, and I really felt that between Piper and Laura, and Andy and Laura in many of the scenes.
they have this central theme of grief. Both of these movies, and grief in a horror movie can be kind of like it's overdone. Like many horror movies have this as their main kind of like driving force, but I think here they've done it in a very creative and unique way.
I mean, you set us up. I mean, but Piper and Andy are now living with Laura, and they're meeting Oliver, and tell us sort of how the story unravels from there.
Yeah, just before we get into like the actual development of the story, once they get to Laura, I just want to say that the movie starts with such a bang. Like it's incredible. Like from a writing perspective, which is something that I always pay attention to. It's so economical in the dialogue, but you get the relationship between these two kids right away. I immediately bought in. It's a perfect introduction. We get their dynamic. We immediately sympathize with both of
Oh
them
my
as
god,
well.
yeah,
They
yeah.
feel like real kids, which is so hard to do.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're
and then
rooting for their best intentions after the first scene you see with them together. Which is, yeah, like you said, it's expertly done, and great writing, but also down to those performances too.
Yeah, and you have one scene with them, and then immediately dad dies, plot starts, they need to go with the foster parent, and the movie starts. It's already like it's going. It never stops. It's not one of those movies where, oh, let's check in the dark room and see if there's anybody, and then jump scare, and then let's spend another half hour talking about nothing because the movie needs to be an hour and a half long. Yeah, like it's so dense and also like so well just like put together. So we have Andy and Piper moving in with Sally Hawkins' character Laura. And I just love the reveal of Sally Hawkins in the kitchen with a blurred background that really puts you into Piper's shoes because she doesn't see, so she only hears. And we have this loud music playing, and we'll learn later what this loud music is actually doing. And yeah, I really love the scene that introduces Laura. Again, an amazing performance. I was just questioning the logic of what happens because I'm no expert. I was never a foster kid, not once in my life, if you believe that. But how does this work? Because they just get to this woman's house. Like, don't they have to meet her before? And like,
Because I watched this with my brother, and we were kind of having a similar conversation. I think, in some instances, I think it's quite there's not that many options for
yeah,
kids,
so
and
they
so
just send you
yeah,
there.
and yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think you necessarily get a decision, and even once you're in a place, trying to leave it on your own accord, I think you'd have to have some pretty good reasoning behind it. So yeah, I think this could be a realistic situation in many cases.
Yeah, and I guess they kind of explain it away later when Andy questions the social worker lady, and she's
Yes,
like,
exactly.
she has worked here for 20 years. She was the best. Like, they know her, so they are safe in sending them there.
Yeah, yeah, you don't question the fact that okay, well, how has nobody been to her house for an inspection and seen all this fucking weird shit that's going on? But yeah, I guess she might have been exempt from that because of her history.
So Andy and Piper have been given the tour of the house by Laura. So they're walking around, and like Laura assigns rooms for them. Like Piper, of course, gets her daughter's Kathy's perfect little room, while Andy has to live in whatever was that, like a little basement. I don't know, horrible.
And
But yeah,
already,
so
you
we
know, they're
learn.
taking,
Yeah.
she's like taking selfies and like cropping Andy's face out of it, and just like a
The
picture of
first thing she
her and
does,
Piper.
basically,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
first thing she does is taking a selfie with Piper and cutting Andy out of
And
the
you said,
picture, which I thought was incredible.
yeah, and you said off the bat that, you know, you felt miserable, and this is it's very like desolate, but you know, it's
Yeah,
quite funny as well. Like there's a
in a
quirky,
dark way.
there's a
Yeah,
quirky dark humor throughout, you know, more of the first act and the middle of the film. You know, it
I
ramps.
mean the ending is dour,
Yeah, yeah.
but
But like these moments where Laura, because you know, you don't know how sinister she is at this point, and Laura is just being
yeah,
so much nicer to Piper, and she's horrible to Andy. It's kind of funny at the beginning.
it is some kind of funny. But I felt for Andy because he
Oh
was such a
yeah.
nice guy. And so through this tour that Laura is giving the kids, we learn about Kathy, her daughter who died, passed away a few years back, and she, you know, she seems really hung up on this, and you know. I mean, the title of the movie should clue us in that the daughter will come into play at some point. But here we have a reveal, another reveal that I loved, which is the pool. So basically, they tour the inside of the house and then they go on the outside, and we see this pool. Of course, there's no water in it, and I loved it because we just learned about her daughter and the fact that she drowned. And they didn't specify in the dialogue how she drowned, of course, because why would she? And then the reveal of the pool was just chef's kiss because it kind of like puts like a little dot at the end of that sentence. Another question that I have for you, Tyler, because here we are introduced to another character that we've mentioned, Oliver, the other foster kid living with Laura. And where do they find this creepy kid? Like, it's amazing. It's insane. Like, now I want a movie with the girl from Hereditary, this kid, the kid from Speak No Evil, and like they need to do something together because that could be the creepiest fucking thing ever made.
Great find. And again,
Yeah.
not only just the look. I mean, I'm not sure how old this young boy is, but or is it a girl?
It's like 10 years old. And he has to do so many horrible things. Like, this was a very hard shoot for him. So, you know, congrats to the guy. I think he has a bright future ahead if he doesn't go insane.
And especially with
because of what happens.
how young he is, you don't expect the film to do
To go
certain
as far.
things that it
Yeah.
does, just because you know that you don't see those sort of risks taken in modern horror films as much anymore. So yeah, it was
Yeah.
I mean, Oliver was fantastic in this film.
Yeah, it was a highlight for sure. And also, I just wanted to say something while we are discussing the story of the film, because you know, Talk to Me, the director's previous movie, was very well received, but there is still a subset of like horror fans who say it's a bad movie because it's not scary. And this is the kind of criticism that I never really get.
No,
Like,
it's because I was gonna mention that this isn't necessarily scary in the similar way that the trailer sort of maybe makes it look a bit more supernatural, and it's more of a psychological thriller.
it's a very harrowing experience watching it, but it's not like you don't jump in your seat
No,
much.
no.
Like it,
You know, Hereditary had a couple of those moments that actually really sort of freaked you out and kind of like made you
yeah,
really jump. And they weren't necessarily just like cheap jump scares. It was something like when the woman's crawling in the shadows on the ceiling and you eventually see her like after the shot for a minute, and it fucking scares the shit out of you. But you know,
yeah,
nothing like that is in this movie. And you know, if that's going to mark it
that's
down for
fine.
you, then it's fine. You know, things just for me personally, I love horror films, but things are never as scary as they were when you were younger, and it's you know it's real, and also it depends on where the environment you're watching the film, and it's as you get
Oh
older,
my God.
it's so hard to actually scare you.
When I was a kid, I found the intro of a Goofy movie fucking terrifying. You know,
Exactly.
when Max is dreaming of turning into Goofy, is that, you know, that's body horror. Like, that's the most horrible thing that
Yeah,
I've ever
yeah.
seen in my life.
There's a shop.
So, you know, like,
There's a shop
yeah.
called Toys R Us in the UK. I don't know whether you have it. You have those.
We have like similar ones. It's not called that,
But
but it's
the
like
mascot
Toy
is,
Center.
the mascot is this humanoid giraffe who should be, just like a nice thing for
Funny, cute.
children, but the advert used to fucking scare the life out of me.
And these horror movies, these modern horror movies, don't hold a candle to the cartoons of our youth. But like, I don't know, I feel like it's such a weak argument to say that a movie is bad because it's not scary. Like, a movie needs to make you shit your pants to be good. As you said, fear is subjective. It's kind of like comedy.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to say is, before I go into another of my Tommy tangents, and we don't have the time for it, I really want to talk about the Goofy movie a lot, but we won't. Fear shouldn't be a horror film's only goal. A film should just tell a story. And if the plot is compelling and the characters are well realized and the technical aspects are drop dead gorgeous, like in this film, then who cares if the movie didn't make you jump in your seat with some fucking loud noise? Like,
Yeah, true.
I actually love how this film has barely any jump scares. I hate those because those are not scary. They're just upsetting for a second. It's a release of
It's
tension,
like
and then
somebody
you move
banging
on.
a cymbal to the behind your head. It's
Yeah.
it's as scary as somebody doing that to you.
And I will always jump in my seat if someone does that.
Of
But
course.
like, is that good
And you'd be
entertainment?
like, "Whoa, look
I
at
don't
that
know.
rush! Look at that rush that I got!" Don't go pay to go to the cinema. Just have somebody bang a cymbal behind your head sporadically throughout
Yeah.
a 2-hour period.
Yeah, and these movies are not like that. Talk to Me, and especially this movie, the the rising intention is low and methodical, and it's purposeful and it's thematic. So, it's a good movie, even though maybe you don't find it as scary as you would
Yeah,
like.
I can
So,
I can
yeah.
understand sometimes, like trailers and marketing can subvert your expectations for especially a lot in horror. Like I remember I was quite excited for Longlegs when it came out, and it was being marketed as like the scariest movie of the decade and things like that. And for me it wasn't scary at all. It was a well-made, enjoyable film, and in that aspect I suppose it can be disappointing sometimes, but I don't think I saw the marketing like that around this, and its quality should still, I think, it still shines through.
Another thing that I wanted to mention that happens in the first act when we are introduced to the house and to Laura and to, like, we kind of get like the dynamic that's gonna move the story along. We also learn that the brother and the sister, Piper and Andy, have this safe word that they say to each other, grapefruit. This is another example of great writing that I really, really loved, because they never fully explain what grapefruit is. Like, you can clearly infer the use of the term from context. You don't need the explanation because it's clear, right away. Okay, grapefruit. But like, there was an opportunity when they are doing the house tour at the beginning. They are walking around the house with Sally Hawkins' character, and Piper says grapefruit to the brother. And I was half expecting Sally Hawkins to turn around and be like, grapefruit, what's that? And then Andy would be like, oh, it's just this little thing we do, a brother and sister thing. We say grapefruit when we want to be truthful to one another.
Yeah.
So, that kind of stuff that would, like, if this was like a classic Hollywood movie, that would definitely be in the film. So I really love that they didn't do that. And there are many nice little touches just like this, both in dialogue and in visual storytelling.
Yeah, the film treats the audience with respect, unlike a lot of other
Yeah.
horror films.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the next scene that we get is the funeral of Andy and Piper's dad. And there's this scene when they are, like, Andy and Piper are standing over the casket.
Well, I suppose before that, there's already, other than Laura mistreating Andy, there's already a bit of a breakdown of the relationship between those two, because she goes in to show him his room and she goes through his phone and sees that he's called Oliver. He says
a weirdo,
a fucking weirdo, and she's fuming about that, and he kind of pushes her as he snatches his phone back, and she kind of acts as, she seems a bit scared by him for a moment, and so you're like, oh god, this is Andy is going to have a horrible time at this place. And you're just like, you know, you're just feeling so sorry for him. You're like, oh man, why did
This is
you do
already
that?
upsetting.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was on Andy's side the whole time. But when he left his phone unlocked on the bed, I was like, "What the fuck are you doing, man? You know
Yeah,
what's gonna happen."
I did, because you know, yeah, the camera sort of focuses on it or pans down, and I was like, oh no, is he gonna leave the room and leave that there? But she just snatches it straight away.
He does that a couple of times, actually. There's another moment later on where he looks away when he really shouldn't be looking
Oh
away,
god, yeah,
and
that was.
something horrible happens.
Yeah, that was the only bit where, you know, I'm kind of like, oh well, Andy, maybe you deserve what's coming to you here. But other than that, I really liked his character. But that was the only kind of maybe bit of contrivance I felt in the movie. You know, but yeah, me and my brother were
Yeah.
both like, what are you doing?
We'll get to that. First, the funeral. Dad's funeral. I really love because here we have this moment with Piper and Andy, and they're standing over the casket, and Piper asks her brother to tell her how the dad looks. And, you know, he doesn't really look at him, and he lies to her. He's like, oh, he looks fine. He looks nice. And then when they are leaving the function, well, they are outside the church. They are standing, you know, Piper and Andy, they are standing close to each other. And Sally Hawkins arrives from behind and gets in between them and separates them, kind of like visually. You know, she creates a visual rift between them, and then she creates an emotional one because she reveals to Piper that Andy didn't really look at the father in the coffin. She's trying her best to kind of like create distance between Piper and Andy. And yeah, so in another little moments that, you know, didn't need to happen this way, but the way it happened really kind of like enhanced the feeling that you're supposed to feel with these two brother and sister drifting apart slowly. And then we have this very creepy scene where Laura forces Andy to kiss his dead dad on the lips. It's like, oh, it's custom. You should do it. It's custom. Don't worry. And this is another way of like kind of like Laura like forcing herself onto these kids, kind of like trying to become this motherly figure for Piper, and also trying to embarrass and demean Andy as much as you can. She's even like throwing her own piss on him while he's sleeping to make him think that he pissed himself.
That was such a crazy reveal, and that comes, you know, a little bit,
Yeah,
you know, that
later.
well after the funeral. Actually, you know, you have this, you know, everything's looking quite bad at this point, and you're really thinking, oh god, Laura's, you know, a horrible woman. But you know, they go back to after the funeral, and she's like, "What do you guys like to do for fun?" And you know,
Drink.
Andy's like, you know, I like to get smashed, and so they end up drinking loads of shots together. You know, Laura's forcing a lot of drinks down Piper's throat, which Andy isn't liking. You know, he can tell he's hesitant to let her drink so much, but in the end, they all have a really good time together, and they, you know,
Yeah,
we have this.
they bond.
Yeah, we have this quite nice moment after sort of Piper's passed out on the sofa, where Andy and Laura sit back to back on a chair, and you know, because I think she's, you know, she says she's, you know, sort of a trained therapist as well, and you know, tell me about the feelings you're experiencing after your father's death, and we get some reveals that she knows about Andy's past, and we get these reveals too, that, you know,
Yeah.
his father was abusive towards him, and he was abusive towards Piper, which was a reveal that I thought was crazy. I just didn't expect that to happen at all.
Yeah, it gives so much depth to the relationship. Well, it wasn't properly abusive. He snapped once and he hit her when he was 8 years old. At first, I thought that maybe that's what caused her blindness, but then they never really specify that. So I think that was just my initial
No,
thought
could be
upon
open
hearing it.
to interpretation for sure.
There's a lot of stuff that like they not like, as you said, you know, the movie treats you with intelligence, like they don't want to spell it out. There's so much stuff that is only implied or shown really quickly, and they
Oh yeah.
never draw attention to it.
The
Another
whole supernatural storyline is somewhat implied mostly, maybe, I think majority of audiences will get it, by the third act, but it's we're seeing little snippets of the VHS sort of tapey looking stuff that we saw at the beginning, and it's this cult performing a
yeah,
ritual, and we get
in Russian,
and we get these little snippets throughout the movie, and you can pick up that this is some sort of instruction video, and then you eventually learn that this is to bring somebody back from the dead, and that's what the whole Oliver sort of plot is going in that direction. But yeah, for the most part, it's somewhat implied and
subtle.
allows you. Yeah, it's very subtle.
And speaking of Oliver, we get the scene that we briefly mentioned before, where Andy and Oliver are alone in the house. Andy attempts to bond with him because he's a very weird, closed-off guy. And, he is mute, so he tries to communicate with him using a notepad in attempt to kind of like let him write down his thoughts. And he offers some melon, which I thought was, like the scene is perfect because it starts off really nice. And Oliver was supposed to stay in his room, but Andy is like, fuck it, I'm gonna let him out because
again,
this is weird.
Andy, hey,
Andy, what the fuck are you doing?
You stop fucking around, Andy.
But Oliver does write something down on the notepad, which is the word bird, which is really weird. And then, oh my God, this was hard to watch. A 10-year-old kid.
This was one of the most horrific things I've seen in a film in such a long time. It made me, physically avert my eyes at one point, and I have.
But the sound design is so good that you actually see it in your head anyway, even if you're looking away.
It's it's incredible, blend of VFX and practical effects here. This is such an amazing effect that they pull off.
This kid starts violently chewing on a huge knife that Andy was using to cut the melon.
And the tensions there before anyway, because we have already established that this kid has, an insatiable hunger that, like we've seen, he's a little mini Galactus, this kid.
He wants to eat his cats. He wants to eat the cats.
Yeah.
So yeah, was incredibly creepy and unnerving, and of course Andy is distraught and horribly shocked by this, and he tries to carry Oliver across this property line. Basically, there's this line in the sand. It's this white line that we later learn is a circle around the house, of course, because devils and containment rituals and stuff. And so as soon as he moves Oliver outside of this line, he starts convulsing and screaming in pain, and it looks like his skin is boiling and stuff.
Yeah,
and it's insane.
And we get this sort of bulge in his stomach and like a
Oh
sense
my
of this.
God.
There's something inside this kid.
Yeah. So in that moment, of course, Laura arrives at the worst possible moment to see this.
Yeah.
And she's gonna use this against him too, to kind of like imply that Andy is being weird and violent and strange. And of course, she's gonna lie to Piper. And here we have Andy taking a shower, which is something that he hates to do because the father used to abuse him and beat him under the sound of the shower, so not to be heard by anyone.
Yeah,
but
you mentioned that she throws the piss on Andy while she's sleeping. You see him sort of wet the bed the first night they stay there, but that's before we get the reveal, and you're like, oh, I could believe that because we see that he's having nightmares and he's definitely still shook up from the death of his father. But after that night, they have drinking together. Andy, when he passes out, that's when she goes into her room, pisses in a bucket, and pours it all over Andy. And you're like, oh my God, you just sort of can't believe it because it's such almost this weird petty thing. But then you get the reveal even later than that, that it's actually to force him to have go to the shower every morning because he's pissed himself, and she cements that when she's like, "Oh, Andy, I think you've wet the bed
You
again,
should
and
take a
you need to
shower.
take a shower," and you're like, "Oh, this bitch is evil."
It's crazy. Fucking evil. Evil, yeah. And he has this vision, this nightmare, kind of like father's apparition, who warns him that Piper will die in the rain or something along those lines. And so this kind of like puts Andy on this kind of like on the back foot. He is kind of like doesn't know what to do anymore. Is scared, is unsure of what he's seeing and why he's seeing it. And yeah, so that was a very well done moment.
All
And
the as I mentioned, they managed to shoot all the shower sequences really differently, and they do a lot with reflections in this film with the cinematography too. And there's a lot of really creepy stuff with the dad in the shower reflections, and we get there's two really good moments that I loved in this movie with Oliver, when we catch a glimpse of Oliver in the mirror, and we see him as this demonic presence. He's this
oh my god,
horned red thing, but you don't see it really clearly, but you're like, oh fuck. Like this,
yeah,
he's a demon.
there was a proper Mephisto in Ironheart kind of moment, wasn't it? It was almost as good.
It was it was not quite as scary as that.
But we were talking about the shower and the fact that the father would beat him up, using the sound of the shower to cover his screams and the sound of him beating him. And this brings me to another thing that I wanted to address, which is the use of the loud music. When we're introduced to Sally Hawkins' character Laura, she is listening to very loud pop music in the kitchen. And I just love this because everything has a purpose in this film. Because when the first time you see this, you're like, okay, fine, Sally Hawkins wants to play this character, the fun foster mom who listens to music and dances in the kitchen, but she's actually a monster, right? And you expect that, because what the movie is about. But the music has a double purpose, like almost everything in this movie has, because it's later revealed. Well, I think it's revealed almost like around now in the movie. It's revealed that it's supposed to cover all these screams as well, because Ollie, has these feats of rage, and so like to avoid people hearing this kid screaming, she plays loud music to cover it up. And this mirrors Andy's own trauma of his father's beating him under the sound of the shower. So, I just love when the writing is so precise because it's incredibly rewarding to watch.
Yeah,
Um,
everything and every moment that's focused on should serve a purpose to the script and to the story. And like you said, you don't get that in a lot of films where this is such a tight, like perfect script. There's really only one kind of, like maybe criticism or thing that I didn't like about the film that stops it from being like an absolute, like
yeah,
10
old
out of
timer.
10, like perfect. Yeah, like you said, all timer for me. And I suppose we'll get there eventually, but it's the it's a specific moment that Laura has at the end, which I didn't love.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean, and I think I'm gonna agree with you. But yeah, so going through the plot, we have Andy. When he has this dream, this nightmare that Piper is gonna die in the rain, he slips and is concussed, so he's brought into the hospital, and he is recovering in the hospital. And Laura, of course, takes every opportunity to kind of like get closer to Piper, and
Start
we
sowing the seeds, that
yeah.
Andy's a horrible person to Piper as well, and and sowing the seeds of like, maybe are you gonna stay with me and you can call me mum and stuff, and you're like, oh god, this is, and she's trying to sort of
Yeah,
dress her up as her own daughter, and
yeah,
yeah.
she's giving her the sweater, and the amazing performance of Sally Hawkins here, I think, comes across in a way that really sells it because she's evil and you hate her, and you hate what she's doing to to this brother and sister, but at the same time you feel like she could actually be a very nice mom, like if she wasn't crazy.
Yeah, she snapped. She snapped, and it's in that scene that I mentioned, which is probably my favorite scene in the movie, when her and Andy are sitting back to back, and she reveals, to Andy about how her daughter died and the grief that she went through, and you start to feel sympathy for her, and you start to warm to her in that moment, even though she has done some pretty already nasty, weird things before that.
Yeah.
But yeah, she soon becomes irredeemable.
I mean, we get the reveal here that Laura is keeping Kathy's corpse stored in a freezer. And
And she's
yeah.
using
So
this circular motion and this kind of ritual that she does, that's instructed from the VHS tapes, on Oliver when he occasionally seems to sort of break out of his possession.
we learn stuff here, because we learn that Oliver is, well, we knew that, but it's revealed that Oliver is possessed by a demon, and that Laura, summoned this demon through this occult resurrection ritual that she learned from this Russian VHS tape. And the plan is for Laura to drown Piper in the pool during a rainstorm, which is how Kathy's died, like her daughter died
Yeah.
back in the day. And she wants to use Oliver as a vessel to complete this ritual. But she's waiting for the perfect moment, and the demon inside of Oliver is kind of like becoming more restless and angry, and
Yeah, because
trying to get outside.
in the final moments of the ritual, and the VHS tape depicts, like, the vessel starts consuming the old corpse and then consuming its own corpse or something. I'm not kind of fully
I mean, they
remembering the
don't
specifics
really.
of the rules here, but they sort of they do
They don't really go into it that
no,
much.
but they do
Yeah.
sort of, which I like. They do try and establish some, rules of how the possession works and what the steps to complete it are, which I did appreciate. Kind of similar, in that aspect to Hereditary,
Yeah.
that had some
And
weird practices about, having the severed head and things like this, to perform the
there were
trans.
clearly rules. Like, I would love for, like, a, I don't know, like a prequel comic that goes into the satanic ritual more. Like, I don't know. I think like they planned it out really well, but then what comes across on screen is just like a part, like a little.
Oh yeah,
It's very.
it just gets the idea across.
Exactly. And here we have another great little, well, great is not the right word maybe, but like, while Andy is in the hospital, Laura brings him this like body spray, that it's established it's his body spray they always uses. And this information is, we need this information because later in the movie, well, in the next scene basically, when Andy returns to the house, Laura has this moment where she sprays the body spray, like she sprays the cologne, I guess, what was it? Like, a deodorant, and goes into Piper's room and fucking punches her in the face.
If, like,
Uh,
the knife scene was so shocking, and that
yeah.
alone would be like, the shocking moment in any other movie, but this just, but again, it hits you on another level, because you just don't. She proper just decks that little girl right in the face.
Yeah, that's when she was already irredeemable, but if you had any doubts about her, now she is fully evil.
You still
She's
had some
trying
hope,
to.
Tommy, when she was, forcing that demon into
I
little
mean, she
Oliver.
seems
Yeah.
so nice, But yeah, so basically she accuses Andy to be abusive like his father, and it provokes this altercation between the two, between him and Piper, and Andy leaves. He goes to find the social worker, the nice old lady
Yeah.
who kind of like sent him there to kind of like solve this problem. The movie has done everything in his power to convince you that this scenario makes sense, that this lady has no reason to believe Andy, but she decides to humor him anyway because Andy sees, while he's waiting for his turn to speak to her, he sees a missing child poster. And we discovered that Oliver is not Oliver, but is actually this guy, this kid, whose last name is Bird. Can't remember the first name. But so he's like, oh my God, so this kid is not Oliver. Laura kidnapped him, and he's trying to convince this social worker lady that she's evil and she's doing stuff and they need to go there ASAP, and they do. I mean, I would have brought with me some fucking security, but I know what the movie is about. The old lady unfortunately didn't. So we have this nice little moment in the car with the social worker where Andy phones Piper and leaves a voicemail for her, warning about Laura and warning her about everything that's happening and like explaining everything about their father's abuse to him. But Laura, of course, intercepts the message and doesn't, she has Piper's phone. So Piper doesn't get to this message until later, fortunately.
Another moment where you're like, oh, Andy, what are you doing? But it's because you're so, I was actually like, me and my brother were both saying it, like talking to each other, because this movie you had just so invested in the characters and you just wanted Andy and Piper to succeed so much that any slip up he had was causing you so much grief, and like the tension was so rife.
And here is where the tension rises steadily up until the climax, because it's a rainy day. Laura wants, she needs a very rainy day and the pool to be filled to a certain point for the ritual to work. So while Andy is trying to get back to the house, Laura picks up Piper from, well, actually no, that happens later. Sorry, but we have Piper. She's doing some sports, which I did like well, what was it? Kind of like hockey? No, what was it? What kind of sport was she doing?
Was it like a dodgeball? Kind of like a
like
blind
dodgeball. But basically Andy gets the house with the social worker lady, who inspects the house, talks to Laura, who in the meantime had to clean up the house because Oliver went on, I don't know how to call it.
A very funny sequence this was. It was almost like, this was almost like a straight up comedic like beat when she's like, she realizes the social worker's coming over and they're sort of panning out around the house, and the house is a fucking tip, and she starts cleaning up. You're like, surely there's no way she's gonna be able to do this.
I mean, if it wasn't for the 10-year-old kid hitting himself, just like ripping skin, literally the flesh from his arm with his teeth, maybe this scene would be funnier to me. But unfortunately, that happens too. So I was horrified the whole time. And also I was on the edge of my seat because this was just perfect. And so we have the reveal. Andy finds, while the social worker lady is speaking to Laura, Andy finds Oliver in the shed in the backyard, eating away at Kathy's face in the freezer. And so he calls for the social worker, who comes to the shed and sees this horrible thing. And this is when they're like, okay, we need to get help, we need to get out of here, let's run. Unfortunately for the social worker lady, Laura is quicker in getting into Andy's car and crushing her to death, and also hitting Andy. And this was crushing in many ways, not only for the lady but for me and my soul, because then we have one of the most harrowing scenes in the movie.
Another one, it's just so many just moments of like pure just uncomfortable horror in this film. And like you usually only get a couple, but there's really so many in this.
They really want to make you feel miserable throughout this film. So basically, Andy is hit by the car, he falls down, is concussed, is confused, and there's a pool of water, and Laura comes beside him and pushes his face in the water and chokes him, basically.
I was not expecting him to die. I
I
really
wasn't expecting him to die,
no.
or maybe he could have died later defending Piper, but that doesn't happen. He dies here, which was horrible, but also in some ways, the perfect way to escalate the the ending of the film even more,
Oh
because now
yeah.
we know that Piper has no help,
And
and
it makes you think, okay, maybe Piper's not even gonna get out of this. And I was so questioning what was gonna happen at the end because, yeah, like you said, she has no help. There seems to be no hope. The film has taken that chance to kill basically the other main character. It's like, okay, maybe the evil is gonna win in this movie, and you're gonna have some really crazy dark ending. But it doesn't
yeah,
quite go to that point, which is why that bit that I mentioned previously, it was the only way Piper manages to escape this situation is because Laura has a moment of realization, and
yeah,
she almost turns good for a moment, and she decides to let Piper go free in the seconds before the ritual is complete. As she chases Piper around the house and manages to get her into the pool, and she's drowning her. I can't remember whether Laura tells it to Piper or to Andy, but she says all she wanted to do was hear her daughter's voice again, call her mum. That's what she had
yeah.
been missing so much. And Piper, I'm not sure whether this was, in Laura's mind, or Piper actually said this, or it was a supernatural moment, and in the ritual Kathy's voice came through Piper for a second as she was drowning, and she calls out for mum, and that stops Laura from being able to complete the ritual because the voice sounded different. It didn't quite sound like Piper. I think there was
Oh,
a
you think it was Kathy's voice? I mean,
I
that makes
that
sense.
was my original
Yeah.
feeling, that the ritual was so close to being complete that for that split second, Kathy's voice came through, and and she pulls her up, and it turns sort of back to Piper.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I thought, just hearing the word mom coming from Piper, she was like, oh my God, what am I even doing? I'm killing a child.
Yeah, it just didn't
But
make
I
sense
think that makes more sense.
that Piper would
Yeah.
have called her mum in that moment,
Yeah,
and she
that
hadn't.
it felt weird.
Yeah, and she had been sort of abrasive at the prospect of calling her mum before that. So yeah, that
Yeah.
was my interpretation of it anyway.
I thought it was just like she was just being like she was confused and distressed, and of course, you would call out for your
Yeah, oh,
mom
totally. It's
if
I
you're, yeah,
think
like,
it works for all three of those interpretations, whether it's in her mind, or it's Piper says it, or it's Kathy's voice, which is why the film is so good, because those things can
yeah.
be left to interpretation, and it doesn't actually negatively affect the film either. Either way.
It's a good ending. It's not as,
It's
yeah,
just for me
maybe,
too much of a quick turn for Laura. She's been so dead set on this for so long. She's gone to absolutely insane lengths, torturing Oliver, this young boy that she kidnapped, to savoring this corpse of her daughter in the freezer. It's to just turn that quickly. I was a little bit disappointed, and that's why I couldn't see that ending coming, because I didn't see Laura's character being able to turn in that moment. But I'm glad it didn't go the direction of, oh, the police turned up, Andy secretly called the
yeah,
police, and they shoot her just
classic.
before they finish. This was it was more emotional, and it was more psychological, which is what the film is dealing with. So I get it. But yeah, it was,
Yeah, no,
for me,
it's
it
it's
was a bit of a
almost
quick
like
turn.
the villain as an arc, basically,
Yeah,
of
exactly.
of of realizing the error of their ways in a way. But yeah, so yeah, the film wraps up with this beautiful overhead shot of Laura holding the corpse of Kathy's corpse in the pool, and the police kind of like coming to get her, and then we have Piper in the car of her rescuers, I'm guessing, finally listening to Andy's voicemail. And while she's doing this, oh my God, another beautiful moment. The airplane. Early in the film, there's this throwaway line when Andy's trying to comfort his sister about their dad's death. And he says something along the lines of, "Oh, like you hear the airplane engine. That's his soul leaving for heaven or something." And in this is, she's mourning is her dead brother, and when she's alone in this car and she hears the sound of an airplane flying by, and again, just a throwaway line that the brother says to her to comfort her, and then it comes back at the end in such an elegant way. Props, guys.
Yeah, it's such a well-written ending because, you have to... Well, some horror films do like to just leave it on a really dour or a shocking moment. But if you want to wrap this up in any way that gives Piper some sort of positive hope for the future or whatever, or a nice ending, this was like almost like the only thing you could have done. And it was so beautifully executed.
Yeah, agreed. Great movie.
There was a bit that I missed actually. I'm going to rewatch this film at some point soon, I'm sure. But on my first watch, and I've seen people mention it afterwards, that I think in the scene after Laura assaults Piper with the deodorant on and blames it on Andy, and she's proper gaslighting him and making him, and he sort of pushes her, but she's making it sound worse to Piper because she can't obviously see what's happening, and she's pretending to be really scared and really hurt.
Yeah.
And I think she goes up and she sort of whispers into Andy's face, did you, something along the lines, did you something when I killed your dad in the shower? And it completely recontextualizes the whole movie because, maybe Laura killed the dad.
Yeah.
It was all, and she had scouted Piper before, and it was all, a ploy to get Piper under her guardianship. And
it's
like I
just
said,
one
just that
line.
little throwaway line almost that you could, I missed it on first watch.
Now that you mentioned it, remember, but like it's not something that really sticks out. And that makes sense.
Yeah, again, it recontextualizes so many sequences you've seen before, and that's what a great script does.